Hi everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and now we're going to go ahead and finish up the 7x7 mini album. We're going to add the magnets for the closures. We'll need a couple of tools. Get your score tape ready. I'm going to be using my art glitter glue today because we're going to actually attach the designer paper. And I've got my regular tools, my pick tool, my straight edge for tearing my tape, and a pair of scissors just in case I need to trim something. And we are going to be layering in our designer paper, which is the Tropical Travelogue from Graphic 45. All right, let's get started. So since the last time we were sitting down together, we got all of our flaps and pockets put in place, and I went offline and added all of my magnets. So I'm going to point out where I place the magnets as I go through just before I layer on the paper. Okay. With that, let's get started. And I'm going to be up and down a little bit till I make sure I'm in frame. I'm going to start with the inside cover. And I've got this beautiful designer paper, and it's going to get layered right here. And if you recall, we didn't tack down the sides, and I'll show you why, because we're going to be able to slip that right behind it, get it snugly placed, and then we're going to take that up. Okay. So let me get my tape put down. I pre-taped most of the items. This is, pardon me, got a little frog in my throat. I hadn't put down the tape for this, for the front or the back, but the rest are, so it should go pretty quick. So I'm excited to be wrapping this up today, and I've already got my part of the design done for the next one. I'm going to do a tutorial for. I'm getting excited about our Christmas paper coming in, so hope everybody likes this one. I think I mentioned it before. This is a DCE, a Graphic 45 DCE, and what that means is it's a paper line that they've released before. And then when they bring it back, they bring back kind of a limited edition. And that is the 12x12s and the chipboard. But it's just limited to those two components. We don't have the tags and pockets and the ephemera cards that come along. So one of the nice things about this album that I'm demonstrating right now is it is a good size to use up a DCE. Because it's a little bit smaller. You don't really need all the other pieces to get a pretty nice looking album out of it. So hopefully it's one that you'll be able to use over and over again. Okay, so let's see. Try not to push down too hard because I don't want the tape to grab before I get it behind the pocket. I am using my art glitter glue, so I put score tape around the edges, and then I'm going to use my art glitter glue in the middles. And this helps. I use the glue because it's a little bit more economically feasible than using a bunch of score tape. But you can use, if you can afford it, and if I could afford it, that's what I'd use, all score tape. But this also allows you, because it's glue, to wiggle into place a little bit before you place it, before you lay it down completely. So I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at it from the side to side and top to top, because those are your eyes are going to go to the edge, so I want that to look as straight as possible. There we go. All right, so that's down. So now I can come back and peel the tape off the edges of the pockets and lay that down permanently. Here we go. All right, there we go. Nice. And then I've got a contrasting paper that's going to go here, and I just realized I haven't given you the measurement for this, so I'm going to do that real quick. For some reason, I don't have a note for myself. Okay, so this designer paper is 7 3/8 by 6. So 7 3/8 by 6. And you'll need 2 of those, one for the front, and then we're going to do the same thing in the back. Okay. And then I've got this little piece, coordinating piece, that's going to go on the pocket here. And this piece is, I'm sure it's the same length, 7 3/8 by 1.5. 7 3/8 by 1.5. Okay. I'm going to put my score tape down. And if you can hear that in the background, that's my air conditioner just going off. It's a little bit noisy. Thanks everyone for all the comments that I'm getting. I really appreciate it. And hopefully everybody's doing okay with the volume. If you like the paper that I'm working with, it's Tropical Travelogue, and it can be found at our shop at www.scrapandcreate.com. Okay. Get my plugs in there. It's burnish, burnish. All right. I think I mentioned last time I was recording that I was getting my son ready to go to school. So he's back in school. So I'm hoping that means I get a little more creative time. All right. So I didn't mention it, but I have gone ahead and this is an exception because I didn't get the tape down on this earlier, but the rest of the pieces I pre-taped and also inked the edges. I don't like white edges showing, so I went ahead and inked everything ahead of time so you guys don't have to watch me with the sponge and inking everything. So hopefully that'll go a little bit faster. All right, so there is the inside liner for the opening of our book, and as you can see, that's going to be a pocket there. Okay, so now I've got the papers. I'm going to go ahead and go to the back, and we're going to do the same thing in the back since it's a mirror image. I'm going to go ahead and lay down my tape, and then we'll flip back around to page 1, and I'll point out where I put the magnets, and we'll layer in that designer paper. So there we go. All right, we'll burnish these and get the backs off, and then I have to adjust my trash can. There we go. Wasn't quite where I needed it. I like to try to minimize my movements so I can speed things up a little bit for you guys. So my trash can was just out of reach. Okay. My art glitter glue. By the way, you can get this in our shop, and we carry the 2 and 4 ounce sizes. And this tip that I have on here, I really like it because there's a pin that goes inside the cap, so you're not always looking for the straight pin to put back in the needle point, and I really like it. So good glue. If you haven't tried it, you should. I really like the art glitter glue. It seems a little expensive when you first buy it, but a little bit goes, I'd say I get twice as, for 2 ounces, it would take about 4 ounces of Scotch glue to cover about the same surface. It takes very, very little. And it seems to stay a little bit more flexible than some of the other glues that I've tried. Okay, I'm gonna scoot that down so I can see side to side, top to bottom. And hopefully you're not getting too much of the top on my head. In fact, I'll do my other trick where I can put these edges in front of me. One thing I'm doing differently on this design is my previous design was an 1/8 inch. I did an 8-inch border, 1/8 inch border, and this is going to be a 1/16. So it's a little bit tighter, and I like that. I prefer it actually. I think it looks a little neater. Okay, burnish this. I'm going to tell you those measurements one more time. 7 3/8 by 6. 7 3/8 by 6, and 7 3/8 by 1.5. And that'll be in the cut list. If you click the more button, I did something a little bit different on the cut list. I kind of organized all your cuts for the black paper. So it'll list the chipboard cuts, the cardstock cuts, and then lastly the designer paper cuts. And let me know, give me some feedback on that. To me it seems a little bit more organized, but I haven't seen that many cut lists. I've seen enough to be confused by a few, so I'm hoping this is pretty straightforward. But let me know if you guys would prefer something different. So one of the things I've been working on with Julie this last week is we had a request for the cut list for the Little Women mini album that's out there. It's an 8x8. And so that's done. I've got to proof it. Julie actually went back and sort of reverse engineered those cuts for me. I'm going to take a look at that, and then I'm going to add it to the Little Women walkthrough. There is no tutorial for it, but at least you'll have the cut list. Okay. And then here, when I'm layering these on, I want to try to keep a pretty consistent border, but also I'm trying to line this designer paper up with this. So when your eye visually tracks down the side, you see a straight line from this designer paper to the next. Okay, nice. Okay, we still need to go back and pull out our the backings, and then put, it didn't let go, did it? There it goes. And then lay our pocket down. There we go. All right. Okay, let's flip back to page 1. Okay, I've got most of my stuff organized, and as I said, pre-taped, so it should go pretty quickly. Okay, so page 1, and this is kind of how I have the cut list organized. If you click the down button or the more button just below, you'll see the cardstock measurements, and the cardstock includes the base pocket page, and so it'll list the base pocket page, which is 7.5 by 7. Then it's going to list any of the extras that I've applied, like this flap and this pocket. You'll see here. And then below that, it says designer paper, and that would be this layer that gets put right on top. So I've kind of organized my pages that way, and like I said, I'm looking to see some feedback on that. I hope that makes good sense for you guys. So with that, let's go ahead and let's get some of this stuff down. Okay, so the designer paper that I selected for the flap is this orange one, which I really like, and this is 6 7/8. 6 7/8 by 5 1/4. Wow, I'm struggling with my allergies. I got a frog in my throat today, so sorry about all the throat clearing. Okay, so for this piece, like I said, it's 6 7/8 by 5 1/4. We're gonna need 2 of those, one for the outside of the flap and one for the inside. And so this is the color that I chose for the outside. I'm going to set aside these other pieces for the moment. And let's get this piece down. I'm going to turn it upside down because I want to line this up from the top down. I need a contrast here. I can't quite see the edge, so there we go. Now I can see what I'm doing. And you'll see, this is one of the reasons I like to use that art glitter glue. It does give me, it gives me a little bit of flexibility to work the paper down. Okay, if you open the flap, you'll see that I placed a magnet on the base 7.5 by 7 or 7 by 7 pocket page and up here so that when it's closed, it'll adhere. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and get those in. And while you're putting those magnets down, I'm going to go ahead and lay down this piece of designer paper. Okay, I'm going to give you that measurement one more time. 6 7/8. So this is 6 7/8 by 5 1/4. And I'll run some banners too. And of course it'll be in the cut list. So this is going to go on the reverse side of the first flap. And these are essentially, these two pieces of paper exactly the same size. So you could actually reverse your design if you wanted to. It would work. Didn't want to let go of my finger there. There we go. Let's burnish that. Okay. Now we're going to come back and do the main body right here. So we're going to take this off. And this is probably one of my favorite patterns in the collection. It's one where I wish they had one more page of it. So it's going to fit here on the base. We're going to slide it behind our pocket. It doesn't go all the way down, but it's going to slide down a little bit and line off the top. Let's get this tape off. I'm going to put a little extra on a strip of glue on the bottom, on this bottom piece of tape, because this is what I'm going to wiggle behind the pocket. For the rest of the tape, I'll probably be holding it up, so I won't need to put glue on it. And you can see I'm not using a lot of glue. It doesn't take a lot of this art glitter glue. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so this is the end that I put the glue on top of the tape, so that's the side that I'm going to tuck behind the pocket and wiggle into place. And we want to get an equal tight border across the top, since we know the pocket is going to be covering the bottom. So I'm looking for a straight edge here and along the sides, and then just enough below the pocket to blend it in. That looks good. We're going to burnish all that. And then here is the coordinating piece that's going to go on the bottom. So when it's closed, it looks like this. Okay. All right. So this piece, this pocket piece is 6 7/8, 6 7/8, so it's the same width as these two, and then it's 1 5/8 deep, 1 5/8. Okay. there we go. So when I'm finished covering all the base pages, flaps, and pockets, we're going to come back and we're going to embellish this. And as part of the embellishment process, we're going to find some interesting things to tuck in here out of the paper that I have left over and any of the chipboard. So it looks a little simple now, but we'll be adding some additional design elements after we lay down the base pages. Okay, so the next page, page 2, we have 2 flaps. We have a flap that opens to the right, and there's a magnet placed here, and then we have and it flips to the left. So if you center your magnet on the top flap, and then you're gonna place the corresponding magnet right directly onto the 7x7 base page. So it'll hold everything into place. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna take off my little cheats. And then I've got my stack of papers that go on here. Now this one I did some pre-cutting, but I have to go back and do a couple of details because I'm not laying down one solid piece of paper here. I'm going to trim this paper, put a piece here, and then add the other piece here. And there's 2 ways to do that. There's one where you could have laid everything down and then added this flap, but then you wind up with this little piece from the Waterfall flap. And I don't like to look at that. I'd rather have my mat go all the way up to the top, but there is 2 different ways to approach that. All right, so having said that, we're gonna start with the large base page, the pocket page, and this is the paper I chose for that. I take it back, I don't have tape on everything. Here's another example of where I don't, so. In fact, no, I did the rest, just not this one. We'll add our paper, or our tape to our paper, get this one down, and then we'll come back and decorate the flaps. Okay, we're going to burnish our tape. Try to keep my desk clean. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the corners and across that one strip. So as I'm trying to torque it on here and get a straight line, it doesn't grab the tape before I'm ready. So we're going to go ahead and take the backing off of this magnet that was placed earlier. Remember, a magnet here, and then a magnet centered on the top flap. There You can't quite see what I'm doing, so I'm going to flip it over. There we go. Okay, and this is going to lay like this. All right, so the next piece that goes on the inside is this one. So this one's going to layer right on top of here. I'm going to go ahead and put this piece down. And then we'll come back and do the one behind it, and that's where I have to do a little bit of trimming to make it just fit just perfect. Okay, I'm going to turn it sideways so I can see 3 out of the 4 sides. Okay, there we go. So that's going to open up, and I've got a little piece already trimmed for this. All right. So I just realized that I'm not telling you the measurements, so I am going to go back and tell you the base page is 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. So this blue page, 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. Okay. And then, oops, I'll come back and give you the measurement for this first flap. As soon as I lay this down. Okay, so you have the front and back of this flap. So the top flap is I have that right? This is what I'm calling on the cut list the right flap because it opens to the right. It is 4 7/8 by 3 7/8. So 4 7/8 by 3 7/8. And you'll need 2 of those, one for the outside, one for the inside. Okay, so here's the paper that I prepared for here. So this is what it's going to look like. But as you can see, I can't go all the way across to cover this because I laid my flap down. So what I'm going to need to do is lay it down. I'm going to do a quick pencil mark on where it should be, trim this off, and then the piece that I trim off will get laid down over here. Alrighty, let me find my pencil. Okay. So I'm going to measure, get it set on these corners where I think it should be. Okay. And then what I'm looking for is I want it to come right up to this seam. So I want to cover this little flap here. So I want it to come as close to this score line as possible. Okay. Lay that down. And it looks like okay, so I did myself a little tick mark right here, so I'm going to trim that. And I'm going to go ahead and use my X-Acto knife. So I'm going to measure how far this is. It's 1 inch back, so I'm going to do a tick mark on the other side, 1 inch back. And then I'm just going to use my straight edge to cut it. My trimmer is not sitting in here with me, so I'm just going to do this with my X-Acto knife. Okay, now I'm going to check it, see how it fits. Look at that, just like a plan, just like I had a plan. So that looks pretty good. Now because I trimmed that back end off, that means I need to add a little bit more tape, which I will do now. My 1/4 inch score tape. And then also because I trimmed that edge, I need to go back and ink this edge, which I'm going to do real quick. Okay, now I've got that inked. I'm going to get my tape up and add some glue and we'll lay it down. So that's my preferred technique when I'm doing this. Like I said, you could have just used the whole piece and then layered this on top, but then you have this little strip that's exposed, and I just don't care for that look. So this way I don't see it. It's pretty hard to avoid in a full waterfall feature, but on a single like this, it's pretty easy to to work around it as I did. Before I put my glue on, I'm going to tell you what the new measurement is since I just trimmed it down. So it's 5 7/8. So it's 5 7/8 by 3 7/8. Okay. Here we go. There we go. And that is what that looks like. And so now I have this little strip left over that I'm going to apply right here. So that all works out just perfect. So I'm gonna try to wiggle this under the edge a little. Is it gonna work? It's not. So I'm probably gonna go ahead and take another strip off. It's a little too fat. So I'm going to take my straight edge and take just a sliver off. When I say a sliver, about a 1/16 of an inch. I'm not measuring it, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm gonna lay it back down, and what I'm looking for is just that I have a black border all the way around, and I do, so I'm happy with that. And I'm gonna need to ink that edge now too. Since I trimmed it. And I'm not big on ink. I think it's, I just don't like the white edge. I don't like to go into my paper too much. To me, it gets kind of messy and it's kind of time consuming. It's not the part I enjoy of scrapping. So, lay down some glue. And it goes right in here, and I just butt it right up against this, what is really the hinge for this flap. And that's that. So there you go. And we still have one more piece of paper to lay down for page 2, and then we're done. So you can kind of get a feel for this sort of accordion, but I just like the way they flips and then flips. Okay, so let's lay down this piece. So the last piece of paper, last piece of designer paper. What is to go? Here we go. This is gonna go here. Okay, it's already measured, ready to go. Okay, we're gonna add some glue. And as usual, I'm gonna turn it sideways because I want to be able to see 3 out of the 4 edges when I lay the paper down. Got a little too much glue, so I'm gonna come back with my finger. It's the nice thing about the art glitter glue is it does not dry shiny, so if you do get a little bit over, it dries clear and matte. And that's the big selling point for me. Okay, so page 2 is finished. And like I said, when we're all done laying down the base pages, we're gonna come back and embellish some of these with some interesting. Okay, so we've got this flap down, and then as I pointed out earlier, we've got a magnet here and one here, and this magnet is actually going to hold both of these flaps in place. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and remove my tape, get my art glitter glue down. It's another beautiful sunny day here in San Diego. So, and if you guys haven't gone to the shop lately, please do. Go check out www.scrapandcreate.com. We just got our Christmas magic in from Graphic 45, so we're actually shipping that right now. So people that have pre-ordered will be getting their stuff. I'm hoping it goes out in the mail today. We were waiting on tags and pockets yesterday, so hopefully that's all in today. But the orders are coming in from Graphic 45. I'm excited to say. The paper is beautiful. It always looks better actually in person than it does in on the digital format. So it's very impressive. So the Christmas magic is in and shipping, and we're still anticipating mid to late September ship dates for Garden Goddess and Flutter. But you can take a look at the collections. They're on the website, but they're still in a pre-order state. All right, so that's down. So I'm going to come on to this side. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and decorate our next flap. And this is the right flap. And as a reminder, the measurement for the designer paper is 6 7/8 by 3 7/8. 6 7/8 by 3 7/8. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing on my score tape, and then we'll get this placed. And then we'll put down the base, and I'm going to do something a little bit differently on the base. If you look in the cut instructions below, I'm giving you the instructions for the space that you need to fill. So what I mean by that is this flap is 6 7/8. This base is 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. So in a couple of instances in this album, I've done something a little bit differently where I've put a piece in the middle and then strips on either end. And I don't give you the measurements for those. What I do is just give you the base. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I kind of figure out what I want to do when I get to those spaces. And it's pretty easy to do. And it's a great way to make sure you use all your paper. If you don't have anything big enough to fill, I like to have a white background so I can see that I'm centering things. Great way to use all your paper, especially if you're starting to run out of the larger pieces. To cover some of the major areas. So I'm just slipping the paper back so I can see that I'm laying down my paper straight. Very good. It's always good to have a piece of scrap paper laying around to use as a backdrop if you're trying to lay everything down. So I don't have a piece of tape over that, so I'm going to do that real quick. And as you recall, I do that to soften the edges of the magnet on top of the for the designer paper. Okay, so because I was using a DCE, I was starting to, after I had done most of my design work, starting to run out of larger pieces of paper. So here's how I solve that problem. I will find the paper that I want to coordinate with. So I like this piece, and it's not quite big enough. It's wide enough, but not quite tall enough. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this down, and then I'm going to come back and put 2 1-inch strips on either side that coordinate with the opposite paper, and that helps me get this pocket page covered, even though I don't have paper that is 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. Sorry, a little bit tongue-tied. I haven't really talked to anybody today. Some days I have those mornings where it's just me. If I don't go to the grocery store, I don't talk to anybody. All right, so what's going on with Daphne? Oh, well, not a whole lot. Trying to get this album done for y'all so I can start working on something that's more Christmassy. And then later on this afternoon, I am going to a sporting event. My son is in cross country, so he's having his first track meet today. So when I get done here, I had to double check to make sure that all my words were right side up, although I don't know if anybody else would notice, but I do. So I'm just centering this. Since it doesn't cover the whole space, I'm just centering it. And it's more important to get it straight left to right because the top and bottom edges are going to be covered. All right, so that is in, and this is what we're going to cover the top and bottom with. And when these flaps close, that's what you're going to see on the very tip of each of the pages. Okay, so it's, like I said, it's kind of an interesting way to make sure you're using all your paper, and if you start to run a little shy, it's a good way to come in, coordinate your papers, and still make sure that from page to page you have some coherence. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and lay these down, and then we'll come back and cover the right hand flap. Also, when this is open, this design feature looks a little bit like, I'm gonna go ahead and put some glue down so I can wiggle this a little bit. For some reason, today, the tape feels extra tacky and it's not letting go of me. It kind of makes like a little frame for whatever your photo is going to be. So I like it. I think of it as, I don't know what they call it, but I think of it as kind of like a little bit of a paper collage where you're coordinating the papers and laying them on top. So a different way to do this, similar but different, would be to trim this tan paper a little bit more and then actually show a black ribbon between the two pages. And that looks really pretty, and I actually like it a little bit better, but it's a lot fussier to do in terms of all your measurements. So this goes a little bit faster, and it doesn't really, you'll see a difference if you see it done that way, but it's not significant. Another way to get that look without all the fussiness is to deep ink your strips. So if you had a dark ink across the top and real heavy, it would come across kind of the same way, almost like you matted the strips. Okay, get this lined up and laid down. And it's very important when you're doing this kind of layering directly onto another designer piece that they're trimmed exactly the same. If they're too short or too long, it's pretty obvious when you're looking at the page. All right, so that's down, and we've got one more piece. Okay, I found my last piece of designer paper. I had kind of mislaid it, so we're gonna go ahead and take my tape off and get some glue on here and get this flap put down. All right, there we go. It's a little warm today. Okay, hopefully piddled around long enough. Hopefully my glue tip didn't dry on me. No, it's good. All right. Okay. As usual, I'm going to turn my book sideways so I can see 3 of the 4 edges before I lay this down. Got some. Okay, there we go. Looking pretty good. Remember, our magnet is up here and on here, so we're going to want this flap to close first. All right, there we go. So how does that look? Make sure I'm centered. Okay, so let's see. We've got page 1, 2, 3, and now we're on to page 4. Okay, I've got my sheets cut here. And I think I'm doing the same thing on this one where I'm doing, yeah, I'm going to do some trim on here. And then I've got 2 flaps, same size, so I've got 4 pieces of designer paper that I'm going to layer on top of these flaps, okay? So I'm going to shift this a little bit and show you where I place the magnet. So I place the magnet on the down flap so that when these close, they're going to hold each other together. And I offset it from this one because by the time we get a piece of designer paper on this side and this side, if the magnet was moved over, it would have to go through so many layers of paper that it probably wouldn't adhere very well. So that's why it's offset. So something to consider when you're placing your magnets is how many layers of paper are going to be between each of the magnets. The more you put on there, the more layers there are, the harder it is for the magnets to continue to attract each other and be sturdy enough while you're opening and closing pages to stay shut. Okay, so I did a lot of pre-planning and pre-taping, and I did it so long ago I can't really remember. So I'm reorganizing in front of you, trying to remember how I was laying these out. So I do believe that these 2 were the insides, these were the outside, and then I'm going to lay down the tops of page 5 real quick to make sure when I go side to side that I'm still happy with the look. And I think, yeah, I think this was going to be my bottom one. And then I was going to do this on top. Yeah, it's all starting to come back to me. Yeah, and then these 2 would be the inside for that. So that's the way I want it to look. And then I've got, in my mind, I've got some ideas for further embellishing the top of these 2 to make it even look more cohesive. So as you can see, this one's, again, going to be a little bit short. And so I have pre-cut 2 strips, and this came from, I think it's the cover, not the cover, but the first sheet. There was a frame around, actually, it's this sheet right here. So this sheet has a frame around it, and so I just trimmed those pieces out, and I'm going to use them to trim up the side of this, okay? So that we can fill the whole page. So we'll do the same thing we did on the other page. Okay, with that, I'm going to set all my papers aside and start getting the tape off. And I think I'm going to do the bottom panel first. So I'm going to set that aside, making lots of racket. And I'll get that down. And then I was looking and I noticed I might have to do something a little bit different here. I noticed I didn't put tape on those yet. So I'll have to do that as well. All right. So again, the pocket page base is 6 7/8 by 6 7/8, and I this piece is 6 7/8 by something less than that. And if you bear with me, after I get the glue down, I'll let you know. But it's real easy. If you do something shorter, you just make ribbons on either side to make up for the difference. 6. So it's 6 inches by 6 7/8. So almost an inch shorter. And again, I'm looking to make sure my text is right side up. I'm going to stand up to lay this down so I can see both sides. And again, left to right is most important because I can't see well enough. I'm going to put a piece of white paper behind there because we're going to run a banner down either at the top and the bottom. So making sure the mat is even on both sides is the most important thing when if you're gonna do kind of a collage page or put strip borders, which we're planning to do. All right, so that's down. And then I have planned these 2 strips, and then when I just looked at them, I noticed that this one has a blue corner and this one does not, and so I probably won't be happy with that long term, so I'm gonna have to go try to find another strip of this. But I'm gonna set that aside for now and go ahead and dress the rest of the flaps for this page. Okay. So I believe we decided we were gonna go with that on top, and this is gonna be the coordinating flap. Yeah, okay. So that's what we'll do. I'm gonna go ahead and get the tape off this, get this down. A little bit of glue, especially on the edge that I'm going to put down first, so I have a little bit of maneuverability. I don't know what it is today, but boy, the tape really wants to stick to me. Okay, there we go. There's one. I'll go ahead and lay this one down. Okay, and I'm pretty sure I haven't told you this, but I'll do that right now. The size of this designer paper is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. So it's 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. Okay, get me some glue down. I'm going to flip it because I want to make sure these edges, the top ones, are the most crisp. If there's any anything that's offset a little bit, I'd prefer to have it toward the bottom. Especially since this particular mat is laying on something so light. There's not a whole lot of distraction from the border. So the more pattern you have, the easier it is to kind of mask anything that's off center. There you go. There's looking pretty good. Okay, let's get the rest of these flaps covered. I'll make sure my magnet is in the right spot. Doesn't seem like it is. So I'm just gonna double check that real quick. That's the wrong side. So I'm just gonna reattach it here. I think it was slightly misaligned. And then I'm gonna cover it. Just taking off some old tape. I'm not sure I'm in frame, but I'm going to scoot things up in just a second. There we go. All right, so got my magnet down. I'm going to use this as my next layer. Is that the way I want to do it? Actually, I think when these are open, I like the way this looks better than this. So I'm going to put this one down. Next. And it's easy because I did not make these flaps different sizes. I can mix and match them as I go. One of the nice things about making them different sizes is if you cut ahead of time and you lay things out, you don't have to remember as much because your designer paper only fits one way. But I didn't do that for this project, so okay. Get this laid down, and I'm liking this. The look of this. Got some glue on me. All right, there we go. That looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, and then that's going to close like that and keep these things closed. Now, I've still got one more flap up here, and that's what we're going to use this one for. And it'll look like this when everything's open, or when half of it's open, that is. Okay, I'm going to get some glue down, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip this around so I can see these three edges. There we go. A little bit of glue there. Okay, so let's turn that back around and look at it. Clear off some of my score tape scraps. Okay, it's going to look like this. And then this is the next page over here. So I have plans to put some embellishments on top of a lot of the flaps, so there'll be something here that will coordinate, and it'll probably be something similar to this, right, where I'll pick up that pattern and bring it back across. But after we get all the flaps covered, then I'm going to come back and do my embellishments, and then also when I come back to do the layers of the embellishments, I'm going to do these two strips, and that way I can just keep moving along today. And not stop and have to dig through my scraps to find two coordinating strips. It's likely that it'll be this design, provided I can find two strips that look the same. But, okay, so here we go. I'm trying to decide. Now that what's upside down? That's another option, which I like too. In fact, I like this better because that leaves it more simple for an embellishment. So then when you open these two flaps, they'll be coordinating like so. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And with that, let's go ahead and this one's a little shy too, so I'm going to need strips on this one too. So the way I'm going to do this one is I think I'm going to scoot it all the way to one side, lay it down here, and then just put a simple border strip on this side. So let's start by laying that down. And if you see I don't have it out right now, but if you saw my pile of scraps, you'd know why I'm doing border strips. Although this is a smaller album, DCE doesn't, go that far because it doesn't have any the patterns and solids. It doesn't have an 8x8. It's just the 12x12s and chipboard. And, well, you get stickers, but stickers are not going to go very far when it comes to covering something this size. So, and I plan to use a lot of the stickers in the embellishment process too. And I'm just kind of looking at the orientation, and I think I want the stamens to be pointing up, but I don't think most people pay that much attention to the detail when they're looking at the book, especially if there's pictures in it, because that's what they're going to focus on. Okay, I'll lay that down. Okay, now that leaves me a strip on this side that I've got to cover. So I'll come back and do that as part of the embellishment. So I'm going to use this one at the top. One of the pages in the collection, this page right here, and I don't know how easy it is to see, but the flip side of that is all these strips, and I've got some cut sitting aside waiting to be used, that are really easy to trim up and use as border strips. And so I'll be doing that on the cover as well as when I come back to do some of the embellishments. You'll see how I'm using those. Not all of their packages or designer collections have that. They usually have some striped page, but this one was pretty darn generous. So it was really easy to use that to come and cover my gaps. So okay, making sure that my orientation is correct. And it is. Okay, beautiful. Okay, the next one is gonna be this. And this had lots of this cut aparts on it. So these are about the size of a 3x5 ephemera card. And so these are the cards that I'm gonna come back, because you got 2 of each pattern. Come back and layer lots of those on top of these flaps, and it looks really, really pretty. And I hope I've stopped and started the video so many times today. I just got up to check and make sure I had started it again. It's terrible. I'm getting old. I hate it. I hate it. I have zero memory. Okay, here we go. All right, and so the map's oriented so that when it's closed, it'll look like that. So there you go. So you can see this 2-page layout here. And remember, we'll put some kind of a coordinating strip down the side here. But we'll come back and do that when we do the embellishment pieces. And I'll do the same thing over here. And let's see, now we'd have to do the insides. Okay, this is pretty easy, not much to think about since they are exactly the same. We're just gonna lay one down, then the other. I actually really like this coral pattern. I could have done with more sheets of this particular pattern, but that's not what they gave me. Okay, it's time for me to do my little retreat plug. So we're going to be in San Clemente, California, October 26, 27, 28. We're excited to be offering our second retreat here in California. And Ginger Ropp will be joining us. And she is right now, as we speak, putting together projects, because she'll be conducting 2 project classes, one on Friday and one on Saturday. And we're very happy to have her joining us again. It was a lot of fun to have her with us last year. If you can, we would love to see you there for the 3-day retreat, or even if you can't make the whole retreat, come down and maybe do a class with Ginger. If you go to our website, www.scrapandcreate.com, you will find all the details. On the home page, on the top menu, there is a menu item called Retreat. And if you click on that, you get all the details, pricing, location. And as soon as she has finished her projects, we will get some photos from her and get it posted so you guys can take a look at it on the blog. I can tell you that one of them is going to be a mini album, and then I think the other is going to be a card set. Oh shoot! Don't stay. Ugh. I forgot I had taken that off, and that's one of the reasons you don't want to take that off ahead of time. It's because you do something dumb like that, and then worry about damaging the paper, which I did, but I'm not terribly concerned about it because I'm going to put a piece of embellishment on top of that page anyway. But I already know that. But I mean, it's terrible when that happens and it's not a page you're planning to cover. You can see I just barely marred it right there. But all the more reason to keep those magnets covered till the last minute when you're actually moving things around. Okay. All right, so with that, we finished 2 more pages. Okay, let's set that aside. Now we are on to the next one, which is page 6. Okay, page 6 is, I just love this paper, and this is one of the papers I didn't feel like I had enough of. So I really wanted to make it stretch, and one of the ways I did that was I've got these 2 doors, and I couldn't cover the doors, but what I did is, I'm actually going to put it this way because this is where I cut the paper, and it marries up, is to lay these down, and then I made these little strips to go on either side to get the full flaps covered, and kind of make this paper stretch a little bit more. So let's get started with that. Okay, and so with this, we are going to be looking to, let's see if I can find a piece of white paper to put behind here. There we go. Center this left to right, top to bottom. We do have some wiggle room because this overlaps a little bit, but that's what we're actually trying to do. I didn't pre-mark the pages, so I am going to eyeball it. There we go. And now this one is easier because I'm going to go off this straight line. And I just told you about lining these up, and what did I do? I laid it down wrong. Well, it's not that significant, but if you had more of a continuing pattern, you definitely want to take your time and make sure you don't mix those up like I just did. So if it was just tape that I had used, which is one of the reasons I love score tape, is if that really bothered me, I could use my undo and pick it up and change it. But when you put glue on it, that's just not possible. It is down permanently. The only way you can really reuse anything with glue is to sort of take the whole flap and trim it down, but don't try to remove the paper from the flap. It won't happen. But I have been known to actually take the whole flap off, trim it down, and apply the whole thing to another flap, depending on how tight I am on my paper and how much the pattern direction matters to me on that particular project. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's a little bit side to side, but this way. Okay, so now we've got these little pieces. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually not going to put any tape on these. I'm just going to glue them down. One of the wonderful things about glue is you get to wiggle things into place. I remember, like I told you before, the art glitter glue dries clear and matte, not shiny. So it's okay if you're a little heavy-handed. Two more strips, and then we will move into the inside. Okay. All right, now I use magnets to hold these doors down, but this is also a really great design for to use a string or a tie. Either putting a piece of ribbon on each side and tying a bow, or using a brad and doing an S curve. I actually don't know what they call that fastener, but so you do have some options. So there's a magnet on each one of the flaps and a corresponding magnet on the center. Okay, this one's easy peasy. It is a single sheet. So it's going to go right centered here. Let me get my tape off. And we are making good progress today. So hopefully I'll wrap this up, get some editing done tonight, and get this out to you guys. And get my craft room clean. It's a little bit of a mess. Oh, I just realized I did not tell you the size of the top flaps, which I will go back and tell you. But anything I forget to say is on the cut list at the bottom of the in the description here. So just click the more button and you will find the cut list. But since I remembered, I'm going to go back and tell you what this is. So this is 3 7/8. You'll need two, 3 7/8, and from end to end is 6 7/8. Because I was running shy of paper, I did my borders. So what I have here is, it's a little bit longer than that, so 5 inches. So these are 3 7/8 by 5 inches, and then these are 1 inch strips on either end. Okay, 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. Okay, I had enough of this paper, so these are 3 7/8 by 6 7/8. 3 7/8 by 6 7/8. So we'll get those down. And you can see when you're doing full, if you can completely cover the flap or the design feature in the mini album with a single piece, putting the album goes together a lot faster. But when you do the piecing, it can be a lot more interesting. And there's, and of course I'm drawing a complete blank, but there are a couple of designers out there that do extensive piecing, and it's really impressive. When I look at some of their designs, I'm like, oh my gosh, that must have taken months to get put together. I think Memories by Leah is one of the gals that comes to mind. She just does exquisite designs. And she does lots of piecing. Very impressive. I don't know that I have the patience for that. Not just the design aspect of it, but the actual laying it down. It takes so much longer. I want to be rewarded a little bit sooner. So just about done with this. Okay, so one more time, 3 7/8 by 6 7/8. 3 7/8 by 6 7/8. Okay, and I, as usual, like my flap, so I can see 3 out of the 4 edges. And that piece of tape followed my finger out, so I'm going to tuck that back in, lay that down. Here we go. How's that looking, ladies and gentlemen? There we go. Now we're on to page 7. Gosh, we're cruising right along. We're making some good progress today. Okay, page 7 has a base, and then it has a single flap, and then it has these waterfalls that we're going to layer on top. So let's start by organizing my waterfall pieces. And let's make sure I've got, okay, that's my flap. Okay, there we go. So here is the base. So that's going to go in like this. And then this was one of the cut aparts. It's going to be the top. This will be the back side of that. And then I'm going to run a waterfall that, so there'll be several of those. So when we're done, it's going to look like this, okay? So with that, let's go ahead and let's get the base put in, because the waterfall is going to be actually applied to the base. So let me get my tape off. Set aside my papers. I don't think I've hit the trash can once today. I've got some score tape scraps to pick up when I'm finished here. I don't know what the heck it is today, but I'm one sticky person. Everything's sticking to me and not to the... I don't want to let go of my fingers for some reason. All right, so I'm going to turn this sideways so I can see up here and get my 3 out of my 4 edges as usual. Okay, and then just because I have so many scraps flying around, I am going to go ahead and put this on, and then also I don't have to worry about accidentally uncovering my magnet and creating a problem for myself later. I just said that, and what did I do? Oh, dum-dum. Well, see what I did? I swear. Old age stinks. I can't seem to get a thought out before I hurt myself. No big deal, because there's a waterfall there. I would be completely distraught if I didn't have already planned a waterfall here. Although, you know, it's good to be flexible, because sometimes you have to go back and put design elements in like that because you're like me and you can't hold a thought. Now I can close it without it. Okay, I'm gonna get this piece put on, and then we'll work on the waterfall. Dummy. Dum, dum, dum. I guess if I move my trash can, I might have a better shot at hitting it. Hope everybody's having a good day and getting a good chuckle out of my forgetfulness. that's done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place these, the waterfall. And what I'd like to do is have my waterfall basically wind up being the same length as this piece of ephemera. So actually there's a little tag. There, I got it. So the top one would be here and the bottom one would end here. So I'm looking to place my waterfalls that way. So it looks like I should put this underneath. I'm going to use a pencil here to help. So my top, sorry, my chair is rubbing against the desk. It's making a ton of noise. So my top one is going to go in here, and I'm just tracing a small pencil line as a guide, and then I'm going to do my best to actually, when I'm putting the pencil down, I'm actually putting it at an angle so it's going slightly behind the flap. So when I come back to actually lay the waterfall down, it'll be on top of that line, so I won't even have to erase it. And then I want my last one to go here. I'm going to give myself more of a guide. So that is the current plan. So number one goes here, come down, the last one's going to get laid here. And that is not a good thing. Check that out. I'm actually going to have that little piece exposed. That really stinks. So I am obviously going to have to cover that up, and I will, when I come back to embellish, I will find a sticker or a something that's going to go on top of this to cover up that mistake. So, do I have all this right? Yeah. So before I lay down my waterfall, rather than apply all my mats inside, I'm going to go ahead and do it out here where I can move a little more freely, and then just apply them, add them to the book once they're completely decorated. Okay. And I've been going back and forth on what I want exposed, if I want to do a design every other design, or if I'm doing all one side one color and the other side, you know, a coordinating color. But I'm going to lay down a couple and look at it and make that decision. I didn't have enough of any one paper to cover both sides in matching paper. So I knew I had to do a coordinating cascade. I just didn't know, I don't know if I want to do all fronts one way and all the insides the other, or stagger and do every other one. And I'm not going to make that decision until I cover a few and actually look at it. Lay it down and take a look at it. Didn't want to let go. Sure if it's not terribly interesting. I'm just taking the tape off and centering them on each one of the waterfall pieces. A little bit tedious, but certainly not difficult. And lucky for me, not directional. So I don't have to worry about putting it in upside down or backwards. Okay, this is my my last one. 3.5 by 4. Is that right? Yes. So it is 3.5 by 4. And we score a 1/2 inch along, the 4-inch side, score at 1/2 inch. And I take all that back and start over. This is 5 by 4. 5 by 4, score at 1/2 inch on the 4-inch side. So when it's closed, it'll be 3.5 by 5. Sorry about that, it was confusing. And then of course the yellow mat is 6 7/8 by 6 7/8. And I have to tell you, I don't know what's going on, but my cadence is really off. The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to realize I think I've left other measurements off for you guys, so you're really going to have to rely on the cut list below. Having said that, I think I did a pretty good job of getting all the measurements out, putting the base book together and the base flap. So once you have the base flap, all you really need to know is you're making everything 1/8 of an inch smaller, unless you want a larger border, then you do 1/4 of an inch. So this is a 1/16 of an inch mat, which is what I like. I like it nice and tight, but an 1/8 inch is also very nice. And an 1/8 inch means you can cut everything 1/4 inch difference, and it's just an easy measurement to work with. Okay, so I have my 4 flaps. So now I'm gonna flip the back side and get the coordinating paper in. So here's where it's important to decide if this is going to be on the inside or if I'm going to alternate, because if it's on the inside, if it's on the outside, I'm going to place it this way. And I'll show you an example. So if it's on the outside and I'm staggering every other one, I'm going to place it this way so that when I flip this up, this is right side. But if I decide I want these on the inside, I want to make sure that it's going in this way and not that way. So I just have to make that decision right now. Which way is it going to go in, so that when the flaps are all in, everything is right side up, whether it's on the inside or the outside. So what do I like better? This look? Maybe one more. Do I like that? Or do I like all blue? I think I'm leaning toward the all blue. It's pretty rich looking. I think I like that. So I'm going to do all. All right, now that kind of decided the order that I want to put the waterfall in, I'm going to go ahead and get the tape off the rest of these pieces and finish attaching them to the waterfall flap, and then we're going to put the flap actually in the book. So that'll just take a few minutes. And then, gosh, one more page and we're done with all the base. And then I'm going to release this video. And then I'm going to do one more video, and it will include the cover and all the embellishments. Oops, I guess I got to take the cap off. Here we go. Sorry, I know there was a lot of bleeps and blanks in this video. I really had a hard time getting it completed without, I don't know what was going on, but it just seemed like there was an interruption every other minute. So at one point I was blabbing along and moving, and I got to stop talking to make sure I get the orientation right. So it's going to go down like this. So I need to make sure that I get this in frame. So this is going to be the top and this is going to be the inside. So I need to make sure when I lay it down that when it's flipped up that the orientation is right. So that's why I was moving that back around. Anyways, just a ton of interruptions. The phone ringing, me making mistakes, just one thing after another. But we are approaching the finish line. So I did notice when I was going back to edit parts of the video earlier that there are some inconsistencies in the measurements, and I want to assure you that the cut list is correct and whatever you see in the banners is correct. I may have misstated some things verbally, and I tried to cut most of that out, but there are some mistakes in what I was saying, but the cut list and the banners are in fact correct. So you can trust those. And I apologize for that. Try to do better. Like I said, when you get interrupted, it's a really easy thing to do. And I'll do my best on the embellishment, the last installment, the embellishment and the cover, to get some quiet time, if that's possible. Anyways, it's Labor Day weekend here. It's warm in San Diego. Lovely, lovely day. The sun just came out. Hope everybody's doing well and enjoying their 3-day weekend. Okay, so I know it needs to go. This way is up. Oops. Okay, here is, I believe, what is going to be our last one. Okay, let's flip this last piece over and make sure the orientation is right, and it is. Looks like it goes this way. Good grief. Fumble fingers. All right. Okay, so now we are ready. So as you recall, when I started this page, we put a couple of, it's pretty faint, but we put a line here for where we're going to place the first waterfall and a line here where the last waterfall is going to go. So I'm going to use those as my guide, and if you recall, when I put the pencil down, I tried to tuck it actually underneath the flap slightly, so this should go right on top. I'll get my tape put down. And I ran a banner for the base of these flaps because it wasn't part of the flap video where I added flaps and pockets, since it's going actually on top of designer paper. I didn't give you this measurement until this section of the video. So it is, if it's not at the moment, it will be running by, or has run by, in a banner. So you'll need 4 of these, and they're 4 by 5. 4 by 5, score at 1/2 inch. So these, you'll need 4 of those. Okay, I'm ready to, me and my fingernails, what is the point? Okay, so I'm gonna get this down and in front of me so I can lay this down as straight as possible. So remember, we're gonna cover up our and I'm gonna do my normal trick and turn it upside down so I can actually see coming down. I'm gonna lay it right on top of our pencil mark. And there is a pattern here, and it's a pretty straight line, so I'm actually gonna follow the line of the pattern because I think visually that'll be more interesting. And it is slightly off from the pencil mark that I put. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my pencil mark out. I'm closing my flap. To line it up, so that looks very pleasing. So that's number 1. And I'm hoping my magnet's right here and right here. So I placed a magnet actually in this flap and here where I tore where it got torn. I'm hoping that I still get good adhesion even after I add the waterfall, but we may have to make an adjustment if the paper is too thick for the magnets to continue to work. Okay, so I know I need to come down to this level to come up with the back end of this. I'm gonna flap that down. So I'm gonna put the first one in, and I'm gonna put the last one in, and I'll put everything else in between, because I want to make sure it's squared off the first waterfall as well as this flap. And that looks really good. I'm gonna go ahead and do I have a pencil in here? Yes, I do. I'm gonna put another pencil mark down here. This is on the bottom, so when the flap, assuming I have a lead, I don't. Oh, of course I don't have it. Anyways, a cheat line here would be easy to erase because when the flap is open, it visually, you know, you can easily erase it and there's nothing obstructing it. But at the moment, I don't have a pencil, so I'm gonna skip that step and verify. It looks like it's still right on target there. Straight edge. How is it possible I don't have a pencil in here? I don't know. Okay, I got one. I was just feeling a little uncomfortable with that. So I think I feel a lot better if I go ahead and put these down and draw my line. That's pretty darn straight. Okay, am I happy with that? I am. I am. So now I can line the bottom of this flap with that line before I push the flap on the top down. So I do want to make sure I'm kind of holding it. You know what? I think I'm going to do my trick where I only put part of the tape down because I'm not really ready to commit. Until it's straight. On the top and bottom. Side to side. And it's a little too low. Okay, everything's straight. I'm going to push that down. I'm going to pull off the rest of my tape and lay that down. There we go. You have to measure, 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 especially when you have magnets, because the magnets bow the paper a little bit. So you really got to test and retest because it's actually creating a bow across this paper, which can cause it to misalign on one side or the other. So I can tell right now that this is pretty light adhesion from the magnet, so I'm probably going to have to do something else to hold this shut. So that is probably going to be something we have to come back and do. Okay. So this is going to go here, and the next one's going to go on top of it. And it looks like I have a little space, a little more space than I had anticipated between them. So there's a couple things I can do. I can either squeeze one more waterfall in, or I can evenly space them. So I'm trying to decide what I want to do. If I create a space like this, then I can run a coordinating banner across here. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because I'm not sure I can get another. I'm checking right now. Can I get one more waterfall in? Because that would be the other solution. You know, I might, it's pretty tight. You see it, is it pushing all the way down? I don't think I could get one more in. That's pretty tight. I don't really like it to overlap that much. Sorry I'm fussing around with this, but it's just part of what you have to do with waterfalls. Yeah, it's too tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to evenly space these two, so there'll be a slight gap here. And then I'm going to come back and put a designer strip on top when I go back to embellish. Okay? Let's see. And I'm going to lay these down, dry fit them, put some guidelines down, and then come back and adhere them. Does that look about right? Yeah. Okay, I think that's what I want. So looks like there'll be about 1/8 of an inch in between each one. Now, if I wasn't trying to marry up these edges, that would have been a lot easier, right? You just butt them right up against each other. But I really wanted the waterfall to cover the same area as the ephemera flap. So that's where some of the challenge comes in as far as the layout. Otherwise, you know, you just butt them one against the next. And call it a day. So, okay, these are the last ones. Get my pick tool. And like I said, I'm going to come back in the embellishment video and add strips here, because I really don't like looking at that black. And it's going to be even more obvious because there's going to be a gap between them now. So what I'm trying to do here is line these two edges up, because they're going to be exposed when this is closed. And I want that to look nice and tidy. So I think that's about where I want it. Okay, I'm not pushing that very hard. And I'm not using any glue on this in case I have to lift them up. And I'm not going to burnish it until I put this last one in. Lovely. Lovely. They all lay down pretty nice. They're not perfect, but it's pretty close. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. And there you have it. So that is the end of page 7. And as I mentioned before, the paper's too thick for the magnet back here. So I'm going to have to make an adjustment. And I am going to do that when we come back with the embellishment piece, because I'm thinking I'm going to add another magnet here. And I'm going to cover it with something. So visually it's very interesting to look at, but not obvious. Either that or I'll put something down here. Actually, no, I definitely want to put it up here where the other magnet is, marry it up here somewhere. So one of the ways I've done that before is just lay the magnet directly on the designer paper and then put an embellishment piece right on top of it, like a piece of chipboard, although that might be too thick, or a sticker, or a die cut, and just lay it right there. So I definitely will come back and do that as part of the embellishment video, okay? All right, with that, we are on to page 8, which is the last page. And page 8 is identical to page 1. So we have a flap and a pocket. And this is our base. So we're going to start with a base. And I'm going to remind you 6 7/8. 6 7/8 by 5 1/8. 6 7/8 by 5 1/8. So that's going to go here. And if you remember, we didn't put the edges down so that we could wiggle our paper behind the pocket before we lay it down. So I'm going to take off the tape. I'm going to add some glue and get this down. So if you look at the front cover and the back cover, they're going to be twins. Both the cover and the page 1 and page 8 look the same. So no matter which side you're looking at, one or the other, it's going to look the same. And I like the symmetry. It's not for everyone. Some people want something different on every single page, and I like that too. Okay, applying my art glitter glue. And we're going to open that up. And this is going to go, which way do I want this? I like this orientation. So I'm going to slide it under. I'm looking to marry it up to the, as close as I can to the score up here, which is the top of the page. And as usual, I'm going to flip it over because it's easier. I want the first edge that I'm laying down to be as close to me as possible. I just seem to do a better job that way. And it looks like that's it. I'm going to lift this edge. Lovely. Okay, we're in. We're in, we're in. Okay, this is the pocket piece. 1 and 1.5. 1.5 by 6 7/8. 1.5 by 6 7/8. Okay, and I think I talked about it before, but what we're looking for is to marry the line up from the original mat straight down. So it's very pleasing to the eye to have that continuing line. Then we're going to take off these, the tabs on the tape and lay the pocket down. Easier said than done. Okay, so we still have the top flap, the inside and the outside. This is the outside. It's going to go right here. So let's go ahead and get the tape and glue down. I've got a little bit of glue on the leading edge, which gives me a minute to make my mind up about placement. All right, there we go. We're going to do the inside, and we're going to call it for this video. So thanks everyone for being patient and waiting. I'm still, as I go along, learning and trying to come up with better ways to present and streamline some things so that it's not so, these videos aren't so stinking long. Takes a long time to put them together, but also a long time to edit. So I'm sure it's very tedious to watch me glue. So I'll keep thinking about it, but I would love to hear recommendations. If there's things that you don't really care to see that I'm showing you, I'm happy to leave those things out. And if there's more stuff I can do behind the scenes in prep, that'd be great too. So just let me know, and I'll definitely try to accommodate try to incorporate any of the feedback that you give me in terms of how I'm presenting these tutorials. So, all right, so I am going to do a quick walkthrough, and we're going to call it for this video, and the next installment will include the cover and all the embellishments. Okay. So there you go. There's the front inside liner, and there's a pocket here. Page 1 has a pocket, and it feels like I didn't take the tape off, so I'll do that right now. There we go. So a flap, and once again, a pocket. Okay, and this is page 1. It opens this way, and we have an opening this way. Okay, 2 flaps on page 3. 2 flaps on page 4. Okay, and I need to come back and put a little glue down here. It looks like something pulled up, so I'll do that right now. You guys are watching. Okay. Let that dry for a second, and then we've got our little waterfall feature here. And again, I'll be covering that up with either a mat or some sort of embellishment. And of course, we'll figure out how to make that stay closed. And then again, this is a twin to page 1. And a twin to the inside front cover. Okay, so one of the things I did do offline to save some time was I prepared all of the inserts. So the inserts go inside the pocket pages. The insert mats are 6 7/8 by 6 7/8, and I did all of them the same. So there's a front and a back, and as I'd mentioned before and previously, I was running out of some of the design papers. So one of the ways I solved my problem in terms of covering this much real estate is I use these border strips. So this piece inside is 6 by 6. So this is 6 by 6, 6 by 6. And then I did 1 inch, or actually not quite 1 inch. Let's see, actually closer to 1/2 inch strips on 2 of the 4 sides. So that's how I managed to stretch the paper out so I could get a full album and inserts out of 1 DCE. And then I also, one of the reasons I did it was I liked having a uniform edge on all of the inserts. So because I put strips on it, I didn't have to worry about having the same paper for all the inserts, just the strip. So I like the way that turned out. So that's what I did on all the inserts. And that pretty much wraps up this album with the exception of the embellishment and a couple of borders that I have to put on. So in the next video, that's what I'll be focused on. Covering the album and adding all the embellishments. And that will finish things up for the Tropical Travelogue from Graphic 45. I hope you enjoyed this album. I had a lot of fun putting it together. And you can get the paper, score tape, art glitter glue. All those items are available in our shop at www.scrapandcreate.com. And I appreciate your time and look forward to your feedback. Thank you.